I'm Bob Shafer, and I have been working at CBS News for 40 years now. He was so good at what he did. He really became one of the best legislators I've ever seen, and watching him in his ability to move legislation, it was like going to a baseball game and seeing the best pitcher in the league pitch or seeing the best home run hitter. He was just good at what he did, and it was all based on personal relationships.
I'm Dan Glickman. I'm chairman and CEO of the Motion Picture Association of America. I think the combination of his passion for justice and for trying to do what's right for the little guy, and at the same time being able to work across partisan lines so that he did not become disagreeable in the process of disagreeing with people. This is a rarity in politics today, where you can take leaders who feel committed to an issue, who push this issue to the ends of what they can try to get accomplished, but still do it in a way where they remain friends with their adversaries. That is a phenomenon that is virtually non-existent in politics today. But Ted Kennedy had those assets, and that was the reason why he was able to develop such relationships across the aisle and be such a successful legislator.
I'm Jack Quinn. I'm the chairman of Quinn, Gillespie & Associates, former Senate staffer, and longtime friend of Senator Kennedy's. Working with him was truly working with a man who just had to be one of the most effective, energetic, and consequential senators, I think, in the history of this country. And he got so much done. He brought so much energy, and he did it with such great good humor. He was never, he never held himself out as a sermonizer or a moralizer or as somebody who was better than others who were engaged in the debate. He brought to the Senate chamber and to public life good cheer, decency, and generosity, as well as a passion for the causes on which he worked.
Nick Allard. I'm a lawyer at Patton Boggs in Washington, D.C. Well, I worked a little bit on his campaign in 1980 and then was lucky enough to work for him in the United States Senate in the 1980s on the Judiciary Committee as one of his legal counsel. I remember my very first contact with him was my job interview. And, I'd been around, and I guess I was good enough to get a job interview, so you'd expect that I wouldn't be so overwhelmed, but I kept having an out-of-body experience. I was looking around while I was supposed to be paying attention to his questions about important constitutional issues and legal matters, and looking around and couldn't help but notice the pictures of the brothers on the wall and the whole family and the whole history, and the thought kept racing through my mind, Mom, not bad, huh? And I guess I was pretty overwhelmed, because at the conclusion of our meeting, our interview, when he offered me the job and I accepted, I stood up and opened this big brown door and immediately walked into a janitor's closet. So, and when I finally kind of mustered my composure and bravery enough to open the door and peek out, he had this expression on his face, like, I just hired this guy, I can't believe it. So, he did have that kind of impact on people.
My name is John Rother. I'm the Executive Vice President for Policy at AARP. I've worked with Ted Kennedy for 33 years, first as a junior staff member of the Labor Committee when he was chair, and for the last 25 as the policy director for AARP. Well, I think there are three things about Ted Kennedy that really distinguish him from most of his colleagues. The first is his good humor. He was a person who took joy in his work and in the people around him, and you could always count on him to kind of make the work fun. Secondly, he had a very able and very loyal staff, probably a larger network over the years in Washington and across the country than almost any other senator. And thirdly, he was very strategic. Of course, he had the end goals in mind, but he knew how to compromise. He knew how to cut deals, and he was very bipartisan in doing that, but always with an eye toward where the ultimate goal lay. So I think it's a real loss that he's no longer with us.
I'm Simon Rosenberg, the president of NDN, a think tank here in Washington, D.C. I think one of the things that Senator Kennedy will be remembered for is his work on immigration. I mean, not only was this an issue that he spent an enormous amount of time on in the 1960s and was instrumental in fundamentally changing the immigration system back then, but fast forward 40 years later, and the current debate around immigration reform in the United States has been built around a bill that's called McCain-Kennedy. And the way that this bill was constructed and the way he participated in this piece of legislation speaks directly to what everybody said about him. He was willing to work across party lines. He built a broad and deep coalition. It was a common sense bill that really went a long way to solving a vexing national problem.
I'm Tom Mann, Senior Fellow at Brookings.
In the current age, is it even possible that we'd ever even see another Ted Kennedy-like senator ever again?
It's tempting to say it will never happen again, but Congress goes through cycles, and my guess is there is a young member of the Senate today that will build an impressive career that we will look back on in some decades, maybe a Sheldon Whitehouse, and say, wow, what a career. But for the history books, Ted Kennedy will go down as one of the greatest of all time.
I'm Terry Robinson. I live in Washington, D.C. I'm a real estate broker, but I came to Washington with Ted Kennedy many years ago. In 1962, I was his press assistant on his first campaign. There are so many stories, but I suppose one important moment was at the time he lost his brother, and I was working for him at that time. He was so strong. He was the anchor. It was a very sad time, and he set an example for all of us, for his family, for all of us who worked with him, and for the nation. Oh, a Democratic Party. He was the Democratic Party. He's done so much for so many people in this country, and he's going to be very missed.